has Canon finally come up with an in-camera solution for focus stacking. The Canon EOS R5 and the EOS R6 both have focus bracketing, but it's up to us as photographers to finish that process off, using software to do the stacking. So will the Canon EOS R5 Mark II and the Canon EOS R1 have an all-internal solution for focus stacking? Well, stick around after this short message, but before we get to the details, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, helps this channel grow, and keeps you up to date on the latest camera coverage. Japanese patent application JP 2024-036872, filed on September 6, 2022, and published March 18, 2024, claims to solve the problem of being able to create an image in camera with both the foreground and the background image not being in focus. So the problem that this patent is trying to solve is being able to create a single image where the foreground and the background is in sharp focus. And the only way to really do that is with a, technology that we have today called focus stacking. Now the Canon EOS R5 and the R6 both have focus bracketing. And what that does is, let's say I've got a beautiful picture of a forest here and I want to take a picture and have everything from the foreground to the background in sharp focus. What the camera does is it takes the first image at a certain focal point. Then it adjusts that focal point, it takes another image and keeps doing that until we have a series of images. But that's it. That's where the R5 and the R6 leave you. Based on this patent, well, it's going to be able to do all of this in camera. It's going to be able to do it without you needing to have software to do it yourself. Although I'm pretty sure there will be a manual option for us. So how is Canon planning to solve this problem to be able to deliver focus stacking in camera? The patent describes two units, the capturing unit and the combining unit. We'll start off with the capturing unit. This component is responsible for capturing images with different focus positions along an optical axis direction. So again, using my example of the forest, is you've got that optical axis direction and it's going to take an image with a focal point at different steps along that path. And then, well, let's go ahead and talk about the combining unit now. Once we have those series of images at varying focus positions, the combining unit merges the images together to create a composite image, delivering greater depth of field than any individual image, regardless of the aperture. It's almost like I've just gotten a sigh of relief, a sense of warmth all over me to actually have focus stacking in camera. That's a pretty big deal. But maybe you're wondering, well, wait a minute, if Canon filed this patent application back in September of 2022, then why didn't the Canon EOS R6 Mark II have this capability? And that's a very good question. A question I don't have the answer to, but maybe they wanted to develop it further. Maybe Canon wanted to save it for their higher end cameras, such as the Canon EOS R5 Mark II or the EOS R1. But there is one potential problem with this, because when you're taking a series of images along a certain optical axis direction path, the one thing that you kind of need to do is not have any sort of focus breathing, and that's a bit of an issue. So what I suspect will come out with the R5 Mark II as well as the Canon EOS R1 is focus breathing compensation. And since we got that with the Canon EOS R6 Mark II, I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts, and some big dollars and some big donuts here, that we are going to get focus breathing compensation along with focus stacking in the Canon EOS R5 Mark II as well as the Canon EOS R1. Now, one thing Canon could do is in a firmware update provide the R6 Mark II with the same capability. But I like the idea of being able to shoot in-camera focus stacking to the point where I haven't done any focus stacking at all, because it involves me having to look at other software to trial and do all that sort of stuff. And I spend most of my time actually working on video. So whenever I have to learn a new something, I always ask myself, well, what is the ROI on this? Is there a benefit to me doing this? And for me, for where I am in my skill set and what I produce, focus stacking is something kind of neat to play around with, but not something I plan on using in depth. But to have it in camera, well, that changes things. It's kind of like doing time-lapse videography. If you're going to shoot time-lapse, what'll happen is the camera will take a whole series of images. And in the example of the Canon EOS R5, the Mark I, you can take up to 3,600 images, and you can space them from 2 seconds up to, well, quite a large number. The only problem with some cameras, though, is they'll actually take the images, but then you have to stitch them together, and it's a bit of a pain in the butt. The R5, it stitches it together and gives you a movie file, which is very handy. And that's what I want to see with focus stacking, do it in camera. Now, talking about time-lapse, one thing I hope the R5 does as an improvement with the Mark II over the Mark I is give us the option of doing it for, instead of the minimum of, I think it's 2 frames, 2 seconds intervals, set the interval to 1 second. No, in fact, why can't we set it to multiple frames? So let's say I take an image every 10 frames, 12 frames, 14 or 16 frames. Can you imagine that? See, if you remember back when films were first being shot, we had frame rates of 16 frames per second, 24 frames per second. That's where 24 frames per second for cinema came, is everybody kind of standardized around 24 frames per second. But in the early days, where you see a lot of these videos where you see people sort of running around really fast, they're not actually running around really fast. These early films in black and white were shot at 10 frames, 8 frames, 12, 14, various frames per second. And it would be nice to have that creative ability to be able to shoot video in, well, doing time-lapse or even video itself, adjusting the frame rate to be a little bit more creative. Whether it's doing time-lapse or regular video, I'd really like to see that option. And the other improvement I would like to see time-lapse, don't end it at 3,600 frames. Maybe set it to a certain date, a certain time. Give us a lot more flexibility. But this is where we're starting to see some of the capabilities we can expect to see in the Canon EOS R5 Mark II and the Canon EOS R1, as well as other future Canon EOS cameras. It's in the patent filings. It's not just like what I published yesterday, going into depth about the autofocus system, seeing some 12 different patent applications on the autofocus system, but we're also starting to see them solving problems related to other capabilities such as focus stacking and breathing compensation, or focus breathing compensation. This is where it starts to get a little bit exciting. And that's why I love delving into patent applications. When I first started covering patent applications, I found it to be a real big headache. And sometimes I still do. If I'm tired, it's not something you want to do. I obviously can machine translate. As you've seen some text in this video, it's machine translated. But you're taking a legal document written by lawyers and engineers, and that's a powerful combination for a headache. And then you're taking that Japanese and you're translating it using machines to English. And it does give you a bit of a headache. But as I've been doing this for a while now, I'm starting to sort of get the hang of it when they're talking about a combining unit or a processing unit or an arithmetic unit. I'm starting to understand whether they're talking software, hardware, a separate chip, or a logical unit. And quite often they're talking about a logical component of a piece of technology. And you know, when I now have these videos to construct, to shoot, to get an idea, I'm getting a lot more excited about it, because when I thought about this one, I thought, well, should I do the one on machine learning, because there is a patent application on machine learning, or should I do one on focus stacking? And I don't suspect I'll get many more than a couple of thousand views on this, but it helps shape what we could see in the R5 Mark II and the EOS R1 when there's a complete and utter lack of any sort of validated and leaked specifications, when as early as next month, according to Canon rumors, we're supposed to be getting an announcement in some form or another of the Canon EOS R5 and the R1. Or could that be May? Or could it be the Q3 of 2024? We just don't really know at this point. We don't have anything valid, but what we do have, because this is a patent application, we have what Canon has actually spent their own time, their resources on researching, and then have it going far enough to say, okay, you know what? Let's include the legal team and let's get this thing patented. And that's where we are today. And that was 2 years ago, back in September the 6th, when they had this thing filed, and then just on Monday, which is today, you're watching this on Tuesday, when it was actually published. So pretty exciting. And if you do want to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest, whether it's related to patent filings for the R5 Mark II, the R1, leak specifications, or forecasting of the camera market, then go ahead and subscribe and choose all notifications. That way you can stay up to date on all the latest and greatest. Oh, one other thing I don't know if you use X or Twitter, it's now called X, but YouTube only allows me to do about 3 videos a day, or I could do a video and 2 community posts, and that's it. They won't send out notifications. So generally, I'll only put out videos if it's for something I consider to be big enough of a topic to go out in video. Otherwise, I do tweet out stuff. So sales on gear, other announcements that aren't quite big enough to have their own separate video. So don't forget to follow me on X as well. And whenever I'm up to doing a live stream, I'll usually tweet that out as well, because sometimes I will get a notification, and no, I didn't just get one now, saying there's going to be an announcement tonight. Canon's going to be announcing 3 new lenses, the 200 to 800, the 24 to 105, and these are the prices. And I'll get out there and put out a video quickly, and I'll schedule a live stream, and quite often I use X for that. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have yourself a great evening, and we'll see you again soon. And don't forget to use my affiliate links down below, these ones right here, if you're looking at purchasing any camera gear from B&H, Adorama, or Amazon.com. That's it for now, folks. Have yourself a great week. Hopefully it warms up. It's a little bit cold here in Canada. Looking out the window here, it's very gray and overcast. It's very much what you'd expect from March, after going up to 17 degrees Celsius, or around 60 degrees Fahrenheit. I can't wait to get the warm weather back, but before that happens, it's going back down later this week to -10. So I guess I'm going to be shooting more videos. It's the only way to keep warm. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you again soon.